enormous responsibility is on the shoulders of anyone who is lucky enough to be successful.
Perfection does not exist. There's a story behind every story.
I saw hope and possibility in life and love and meaning inside of the difficulties.
This is my story, and this is my life, and I can't hide it.
The shock of the impact of what you actually seen and smelled and touched, it stays with you.
Every single person can make a difference in the world, and every little thing counts.
I'm a guy who want to write his own story.
Nelly Furtado is a multi-Grammy Award-winning artist who inspires legions of fans with her unique sound and style. She creates a music that's so personal, many of us feel like we know her. But it was only when I traveled with Nelly to Africa and saw her singing with a group of Kenyan girls that I really began to know her. Despite her international stardom, she's always pushing herself professionally, personally, and as a global citizen. Nelly stomps down boundaries to make a bigger impact on the world. That's the Nelly I know, and that's why she's a shameless idealist.
We'd spend a lot of time by the ocean because I grew up in Victoria, British Columbia, which is on Vancouver Island. My father would take us walking by the shore and we would play in the waves. I grew up in a very musical household. My grandfather, my great uncles, they were all musicians and composers, and they were completely obsessed with music, and so it just really runs in my blood. My mother sang in our church choir, and I was mesmerized by their voices, and from then on, I just kind of fell in love with music. It was really nice to be a child and be immersed in music. My mom worked at a motel, and she was the housekeeper there. So she'd bring me to work with her when I was really little, and I would sit in this, like, I think it was a laundry basket. I was in there in the laundry room, and one of my earliest memories, actually, is listening to the sounds in the laundry room. And it was like, boom, clap, boom, clap, and it had this rhythm, and I remember as a little kid, like, hearing the rhythm and all the sounds. I was always interested in sound experimentation. Since I was little, I would try to sample like sound effects I'd hear on my dad's like vinyl records and try to sample them on my tape recorder, but I was only about 5. And so these early I have these great early musical memories of just listening to like everyday rhythms.
You like me till you heard my on the radio, but now I'm just
The moment I knew I wanted to be a singer, I was 4 years old. I was a part of a children's choir, and it was Portugal Day. My mother and I had prepared a duet, and it was sort of a mother-daughter duet. You know, I sing in my cute 4-year-old voice, "My," which means mom. And then she says, "Minha filha," like, my daughter. It's very cute. And we got it on that stage, and it was my first time on stage. And I was only 4, but I just knew immediately that one day I would be singing in front of thousands of people, and I just completely had a vision of it in my head because I liked the immediate connection with the audience, and I overall just loved that people seemed so happy when I was on stage, and that connection. My mother is my major role model because she always knew what she wanted and sort of how to get it and how to communicate with people and how to be true to her vision of things she wanted. But I always knew I had this dream of being a musician. So I never kind of doubted myself. I listened to a lot of music. I really made an effort to hang around as many musicians as I possibly could and learn as much as I could about the instruments I played. And around age 12, I started writing songs. And then by the time I was finished high school, I had kind of met a few different people in the music industry who lived in Toronto. And I kind of always knew that if I wanted to make my dream come true, I'd kind of have to move. So I moved to Toronto right when I graduated high school. And I just really dove into the music scene in Toronto. As a teenager, kind of going to the big city to try to make it, a lot of, sort of challenges. I was faced with a lot of, internal and external pressures and challenges. I gotta say that first year in Toronto trying to make it, you know, in the music business was a failure because, and I see failures as good things, learning experience. It was probably one of my most formative years of my whole life because it was really hard. I came here, I remember crying, calling home and just being like, oh, it's so hard. What, you know, I don't know. I was confused about what I wanted to do. I still wasn't sure if I wanted to go to university, if I really was certain that I wanted to make this musical dream come true right now at that age, at such a young age. I was kind of unprepared for the reality, I think. When you're, you know, young and full of energy and ideas, sometimes you get so excited about the ideas that you want it all now, and you want it all right away. And you don't see the big picture, and you don't see the building blocks. And so you really do have to kind of forgo the immediate satisfaction for long-term gain, because you have to look at your bigger dreams and goals and kind of, you have to pace yourself and think about what you really want and what makes you happy. But then it happened. You know, I made the connections and I met the right people, and I never wavered from my musical vision. I think that was really important, kind of believing in my musical originality and trying to see through my creative vision through. I think that's what helped me.
By sticking with her vision, the girl from Victoria quickly found herself in the spotlight. And for her, it was pretty surreal.
I feel like all my years of dedication to music since I was a child had prepared me for that moment, but you could never prepare for being all of a sudden on TV in front of millions of people. You know, I remember being flown to a promotional trip to Europe for the first time and having, you know, people interview me about my album, and I kind of felt unworthy of that, you know, attention. I felt like, oh, I'm so young and I'm just starting, and wow, I mean, you kind of feel, it definitely tests your insecurities a little bit because you wanted that your whole life, but all of a sudden it's all coming at you really quickly. So it can be a little overwhelming, but of course incredibly exciting. The first time I heard my song on the radio, I was living in this little apartment and I kind of woke up in the morning to it as my alarm. It kind of came on the radio and I was sleeping and it came on and I heard I'm Like a Bird on the radio, my first single, and it was very surreal. I was kind of like afraid to leave my apartment. It was a very bizarre time, but it was so exciting. It was like being on a wild roller coaster ride.
I'm like a bird, I only fly away. I don't know where my soul is. I don't know where my home is. And baby, all I need for you to know is like a bird, I'll only fly away. I don't know.
In 2000, Nelly Furtado's musical career blew up, and sights and sounds of her were suddenly everywhere. Life, as she knew it, would never be the same.
My album had just come out, my first album. You know, I had toured a little bit already at that point. But then, all of a sudden, I got this phone call that U2's opening act got sick and they needed a replacement. So I was given 5 dates to open for U2 on this tour called the Elevation Tour, which was a really big worldwide tour. You know, they're huge arenas. I always admired Bono for his humanitarian work. I loved his music as well because I always felt like his music had a lot of heart and soul in it, and his voice had a lot of conviction. When I met him, he told me that him and his guitarist, The Edge, absolutely adored one of my songs called On the Radio. When your music connects with anybody, you know, let alone people you totally admire, it's very thrilling. It's quite fantastic and overwhelming, really. Yeah. It was really neat having sort of dreams come true one by one in a short amount of time.
Singing had always been Nelly's greatest joy, but now that she'd found her place in the music world, it was time for something new.
I kind of worked extremely hard in the first sort of 10 years of my career where I think I worked about 25 hours a day. But I had, this time to work on music all the time, and there was absolutely no balance because all I thought about was music and all I did was the career, and that's great. But as my life progressed, I found myself, really, really in love with, the idea of having a family. And then once I did make that dream come true, that became the most important thing. But then I was also aware of ways I could kind of combine my career with my home life. And so I kind of just looked at my role models again, my mom, my grandmas, my aunts, and all the women in my life that raised kids and worked, and how they made it work and what they did.
It wasn't until I became a mother that I fully was able to navigate the music business. And so I think just with the introduction of more of a family life and sort of balance to my life, it's made my career even more fruitful.
I just love those artists that use their voice for social change. I had an interesting conversation with Alicia Keys, who is somebody who started out in the music business around the same time as me. And one time I was sitting next to her at a dinner, and I said to her, it's amazing what you do, with the Keep a Child Alive program and all the initiatives she started with childhood HIV and everything. And I thought, wow, and you seem so driven and like you really know that like that's your thing, that's your initiative. At that point in my career, I hadn't really found my thing yet, and I was kind of wanting advice, because it was troubling to me that I had exerted all this energy and put energy into music and really knew that that childhood feeling of I love connecting with people and making them happy, but then I wasn't really able to transfer that over into a more meaningful, in a more tangible way sort of endeavor. And I admired people who had achieved that, so I asked her, how did you know that was your thing? And she said, I think you just know when you find your thing. And, when you find it, you know. And I just kind of trusted that and thought, okay, I guess I haven't found my thing yet. But it's been 10 years almost. When am I gonna find my thing?
A global superstar with a beautiful family, Nelly Furtado had it all, but yearned for just a little bit more. She wanted to make a lasting difference in the world.
I really wanted to spread awareness and help use my voice, in a bigger kind of way. And when I got invited to go to Africa with Free the Children, I had no idea the impact that it would end up having on me. It was a process, discovering how much I wanted to be a part of Free the Children that started from the moment the plane touched down in Nairobi. Every day I met somebody new, every day I met new inspired individuals. There's the communities you meet, and then there's the new community that develops between Free the Children and the people in the communities they work with.
I know you worked so hard to be able to go to this school, so you're all inspiration. Thank you.
It just became apparent. I knew, just like Alicia said, you'll know, when you find the thing, and that's what happened.
Paint my face in your magazines, make it look wider than it seems. Paint me over with a dream, shove away my ethnicity.
Powerless is probably one of the most important songs in my music catalog. It's a pensive song, but it's also about, again, it was almost like a reminder to myself when I wrote that song. It was like I was reminding myself to stick to my guns and to be me and to continue on my path.
So say what you want.
And so when I performed Powerless for the girls at Kisaruni, I never imagined that it would make any kind of impression on them at all. I just thought it was a song, they might not get it, I don't know if they're gonna like it. And then sure enough, from the moment I stopped singing it, all they were doing was asking me to repeat it over and over again. They wanted to learn the song.
You teach us.
Oh, teach you one, okay. Yeah, this life
is too short to live it just for you. But when
And to see these girls who had become so empowered by their educational experience at Kisaruni, then be inspired by my song, which is about empowerment. It was kind of poetic because it's kind of like the new chapter, you know? The Kisaruni girls are the next generation. In terms of girls of the world and just how they feel about themselves and the potential for the future, I think women are going to be completely unstoppable in a couple of generations. Completely. One of the things I was most excited about is doing, and creating and being around African music and collaborating potentially with musicians over there. So when I found out the Kenyan Boys Choir were gonna be there, I was thrilled. I was excited. I knew, that they performed at President Obama's inauguration, and I kind of went online and found out some of their stuff. And we just had the jam of a lifetime, Africa was life-changing in many ways. I think it just opened my heart, really. So much community, so much sense of family, love, culture, creativity, musicality, all these beautiful, wonderful things, all these positive things. And it made me really hopeful for the future and excited about the world we live in.
I wanted to see you guys again, and wanted to tell you something exciting. They've decided that there's room for one more very deserving special student. You, Susan.
Thank you, thank you.
Nelly. You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Once I got back on the plane and it kind of took off from the runway and I was in the air, all the impact of the week suddenly hit me. I learned so much, and I've never learned more in such a short amount of time. And I was overwhelmed with the emotion of what just happened. And I still get emotional thinking about it. So it was literally like I arrived there one person and I left like a different person. It was beautiful. It just got me thinking about decisions I'd made in the past and what I kind of wanted to create for the future. And I decided that I would love to start a real initiative, like a tangible thing that I could, be a part of with Free the Children.
With an unwavering commitment to her craft and to her community, Nelly Furtado is the ultimate mix of style and substance.
I definitely live for the creative high. I think that there's something that happens when you're creating music, when I'm collaborating with other people, and we tap into an energy that we can't quite put our finger on. We know it's there, it's alive, it feels magical, it feels powerful, it feels like you've been transported somewhere else, but you can't describe it, you can't break it down, it's not scientific, it's the opposite, and that's what I love. I love those moments. They're really magical. Wow, there've been a lot of really great moments, from, performing, in front of the Eiffel Tower, to performing at the Olympics, to performing with some of my favorite artists. As I grow and become more mature in this process of being, a recording artist, I learn to enjoy the moment more because, once it's gone, you can't really enjoy it anymore.
As Nelly's career continues to develop, so is her passion for social change.
Today I wanted to share something with you. I'm making a very special announcement. I'm donating $1 million to Free the Children. To help free the children, empower girls.
in Africa. I'm giving this gift because I was inspired by the children I met in Kenya, and so inspired by all of you.
Along with that announcement of the incredible contribution to free the children, she was able to sing again with the Kenyan Boys Choir, this time at the ultimate rock show for social change, We Day.
Although you might, sing and dance on stage and it looks pretty perfect. At the end of the day, you're just another human being learning. I think my greatest life lesson for sure is never to be afraid to make mistakes, because you learn so much from them. And don't be interested in perfection. Perfection does not exist, There's a story behind every story.
I like the